and today I want to review and discuss Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. So this is the fourth book in the Throne of Glass series, and because of that, the spoiler-free section of this video is going to be very brief. I've talked about the first 3 books in videos before, so I'll link those down below if you want more details on the beginning of the series. But what I can say about this book is that I absolutely loved it. It is definitely my favorite in the series so far, and it's also my favorite that I've read this year so far. I love the characters and the world and the plot and the tension, and just I love this series a whole lot, and this book is the best one yet in my opinion. I highly recommend starting the series if you have not yet done so. And if you have started it and you maybe didn't love the first book, then I definitely do encourage you to keep going, because I didn't love the first book either. Like, I did really enjoy it, but it wasn't my favorite. And, you know, here we are, 4 books in, and this is my favorite. This is like my favorite thing in the world right now. Also, can we take a quick moment to appreciate this cover, because this is also the most beautiful cover so far, I think, and the other covers have been pretty great too. So I love everything about the series, from the covers to the words inside to the fact that it's almost 700 pages. I just wish it was more. I want the series to go forever. Now, critically, this book was not perfect, but on an enjoyment level for me personally, it was. It was amazing and fantastic, and again, I loved it. And that is gonna be it for the spoiler-free section of this video. So if you have not yet read this book, then you gots to go, because I need to discuss some spoilers starting now. Bye, non-spoilery people, bye! Alright, let's talk about this book. So before I started reading, I actually rewatched my Heir of Fire book talk, and there were like 5 or 6 things that I really wanted to happen, and they all happened. We had the Aedion Aelin reunion, Rowan came back, we brought back magic, we killed the king, we killed Arobynn, we saved Dorian, we had the Manon Aelin confrontation, just oh my god, everything happened in this book, and it was amazing! One of my favorite aspects of this book was the pacing, and that might sound a little bit weird, but like, it's a 650-page book, and so much stuff happened, and it kept happening. Like, there was never a dull moment, there was always something happening, there was always some good tension, and it was everything. I loved this book so much. I took lots and lots of notes, and now I'm gonna go through those notes and tell you guys some of my thoughts and impressions as I was reading. So the book opens on a Dorian chapter, and we're like a paragraph in, and I already feel like crying. Dorian, baby, precious cinnamon roll, too good, too pure, you don't deserve this. But at least there's still hope, you know? There's a piece of Dorian still in there. We can still save him. We can still save him. We move on to Aelin meeting with Arobynn, and this is what I mean about the pacing being just perfect, because we're already getting things rolling. Progressing this plot with Arobynn, we're working on getting the necklace, we're working on getting him killed, it's all good. I'm really glad I read The Assassin's Blade before reading this book, because there's so many references, and we met a couple characters in the novellas that come into play in this novel, and I'm glad I had that basis. Like, it's not necessary, but I'm glad I read it before this. And if you're watching this part of the video, then it's probably already too late for you to read The Assassin's Blade before this book if you haven't, but read The Assassin's Blade, it's fantastic. Okay, let's talk about Chaol for a minute here. I know that there's gonna be a bit of controversy surrounding Chaol in this book, because any romantic relationship between him and Aelin is pretty much decimated. That ship is so sunk, and I'm not too torn up about it because I was never a Chaol shipper. Though I will say that I did like Chaol as a character a lot more in this book than in Heir of Fire. In Heir of Fire, I thought he was kind of frustrating because he was like wavering back and forth so much. But I did like his stand in this book. Like, he is firmly loyal to Dorian, and I loved that because I love their relationship. And I liked the antagonistic relationship between Chaol and Aelin in this book, not just because because I don't ship them, but because he had a point. I don't completely agree with his point, but it was a reasonable perspective. Like, Aelin is kind of wild and unpredictable, and she's already so powerful. If she gets rid of the king and magic comes back, like, where are the checks and balances in this system? Now, spending so much time in Aelin's perspective, and like, I feel like I do really know her character, I don't think she's going to go crazy and become like a tyrant worse than the king, but I do think that it's completely reasonable and important that somebody questions her amount of power. Who would stop her if things did get out of control? I thought it was an interesting perspective, and I liked that dynamic. Then we catch up with Manon and the witches, and I did like the plotline of the witches in this book, but not as much as in Heir of Fire when they were like training the dragons. I thought that was a lot more exciting. This one was more like, oh shit, what are they doing? With the demon babies and just I didn't, it was uncomfortable. I do think it's interesting the direction the story went in there, and that the Duke and Kaltain were there. That was unexpected. Also, while the Manon and Alid chapters were interesting, I was just so much more invested in Aelin and friends. Like, my favorite Manon chapters were the ones where her and Aelin were fighting. That showdown was fantastic. I do really love the amount of badass female characters in this book series. Like, we have Aelin, we have Manon, we have some new ones in this book like Nesrin and Lysandra, who's actually in the Assassin's Blade, but she becomes much more interesting and badass in this book. I'm also really thankful for the friendship between Aelin and Lysandra, because like, Aelin needed a girlfriend. Though I was a little bit iffy about trusting her at first, like, I was bracing myself for a terrible betrayal, and I'm really glad that didn't happen. Arobin is such a douche canoe. Like, he is so gross and manipulative, and I'm kind of glad we didn't kill him right away, even though I wouldn't have hated it if we did do that. But it was interesting, and I guess good for the story to see him being like manipulative and just a disgusting human being. But yeah, Arobin having so much control in the rescuing of Aedion just made me really nervous. I did love the tension though. Like, we know it's a trap, and working with Arobin, he could betray Aelin at any minute. And then we have Aedion himself, who is like ready to die and who wants to die. All the tension and the planning, it was like a heist. And I love heist plotlines in books. So just the entire rescuing Aedion segment, I was loving it. But we save Aedion and we narrowly avoid killing Dorian, and then a couple chapters later, we finally get the Aedion-Aelin reunion, and it's everything that I wanted, and I loved it. It's another one of my favorite moments of this book. And then we had another one of my favorite moments, which I'm gonna be saying a lot in this video. It was like favorite moment after favorite moment after favorite moment, but this one is like really up at the top of the list because this one is Rowan coming back. Can we talk about Rowan in this book? Oh my god. Rowan and Aelin's relationship was the highlight of Heir of Fire for me. So I was really missing him in like the first third of the book, and I was so overjoyed when he returned. And like, I don't know how it happened, but pretty much right away, I started shipping it. I started shipping Rowan and Aelin. I didn't expect to. I didn't plan on this, but I am so on board this ship, and this ship is sailing, and it's beautiful, and I love it. However, I do still kind of ship Dorian for Endgame. Like, I love Rowan and Aelin together, and I would be okay if like the relationship drama for Aelin stops there and her and Rowan are just together forever. But we have 2 more books left, and I kind of think that Dorian and Aelin are going to end up together in the final book. Like, we have a lot of stuff to cover before we get there, but I do still think it's a possibility. I keep waiting for the bonding mate thing to come into play, but I don't think it has yet. So it's hard to tell, like, would Aelin even recognize that? It kind of seems like she bonded with Rowan, but I'm not sure. As far as I can tell, all ships are still a-sailin', you know, except for the Sam ship and the Kale ship. So the Dorian and Rowan ships are still a-sailin', and I am on board both of them. Can you be on board 2 ships at once? I feel like the Dorian ship is just docked for a little while, and the Rowan ship is a-sailin', but I do still think that Dorian is endgame. I don't know. I love Rowan. I love Dorian. No matter who Aelin ends up with, if she ends up with anyone, because, like, this series isn't about the shipping and the romance. There's so much other stuff going on, but, you know, the shipping and the romance part is real fun. But yeah, I said this in Air of Fire, and I'll say it again. I am Team Aelin. Like, whoever Aelin ends up with, I'm gonna be happy with it, or I think I'm gonna be happy with it. I'm putting my faith into Sarah J. Maas to steer these ships into harbor. Did that work? I don't know, moving on. But yeah, once Rowan showed up, this book just became like my favorite thing in the universe. Because we have the Rowan and Aelin relationship, which I love, and also Rowan's just a fantastic character. And also, he shows up and he starts like revealing secrets left and right. He's like, oh, Aedion, I know your father. Oh, Lysandra, you're a shapeshifter. And I just loved all of it. Most of my notes for these chapters after Rowan showed up are just like, damn, I ship this. Like, oh god, do I ship it. Ship, oh my god. Do you see some of this? It's just like, I ship them, oh my god. The flirting! I can't! I couldn't. I still can't, actually. Like, I loved Aelin and Rowan's platonic-ish relationship in Air of Fire, and I really loved their romantic relationship in Queen of Shadows. Like, the flirting and them both questioning their self-control, and it was just the tension. I loved it. I loved it. Aelin gets the amulet and Lysandra kills Arobynn, and we're just like checking things off our to-do list like a boss. We deal with the aftermath of Arobynn's death and the assassins and all that, and I loved it. Like, I loved how Aelin outsmarted him and like out-plotted him. It was just beautiful. And then we go to this bone temple, which was super creepy, and we find out that there is a Volg king, and that the king of Adarlan is planning to raise him. As soon as I read that, I knew that the Volg king had already been raised. And I thought it was the king of Adarlan who was the Volg king, but he says it's the Duke Parrington, and I don't believe that. I went back and read some parts of Throne of Glass, and it seems like Duke Parrington was very submissive to the King of Adarlan. And that, like, doesn't make sense to me unless that took place before the Volg King was inside him, but I still don't really think that makes sense. My theory is that the Volg King is inside the Queen, or inside the King's son, Dorian's brother, Hollin. I'm pretty sure that Hollin was conceived when the King was already, like, possessed by a Volg prince. So, even if Hollin is not the Volg King, some sketchy shit is still going on there. He is still evil. Like, we already saw him being evil in the first book. He beat one of his maids so badly they couldn't cover it up, and he had to get sent to, like, that school in the mountains. So Hollin is evil. He's either evil because his father was possessed by a Volg demon while he was conceived, or he's evil because he is the Volg King. I really hope this theory is correct, just because I'm not very scared of Duke Parrington. He doesn't seem like the big bad But Holland, we don't know too much about him, and he has that connection with Dorian. I think him being the big bad is so much more compelling and interesting. Anyways, before the confrontation with the king at the end, we had the confrontation between Aelin and Manon, and I loved it. They're both so badass, and when they were fighting, they were so sassy, and Aelin ends up saving Manon's life, and then Manon gives Aelin the tip about how Dorian is still in there, and it was just, I loved everything about them interacting. Like, I'm so glad that they're interacting and that they know about each other now. This Manon and Dorian relationship, though, like, what's happening there? It's very interesting how there's like a connection there, and she came to see him after the Volg Prince was out of him at the end there. I am very intrigued to see how that plays out. Like, I really do want to see Manon interacting with more of our core cast of characters now. I'm also really excited for Elide to make her way to Aelin. Like, she's looking for Celaena Sardothian, who is Aelin, and she's also loyal to Aelin, and like, she would be a part of Aelin's court. Her mother sacrificed herself so Aelin could get free, and like, I loved that moment where Manon realized that this is Aelin and she's still alive, and she tells Elide. It was just the dynamic between those three. I love it. I want more of the characters to interact with more other characters they haven't interacted with yet. I love this series so much. Now, this Chaol and Nesryn ship, I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I don't really ship Chaol and Aelin together, but I don't know about this one. I wanted a bit of romance between them. I feel like it escalated a little bit quickly, and like, they had a physical relationship before, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't dislike it. It's not like Sorsha, who I disliked a lot, but I'm not completely on board it yet. But that scene in the church where she makes Chaol promise that he is going to return just made me so terrified for Chaol's well-being. Like, the first rule of going on a suicide mission is that you don't promise someone that you're gonna survive it, because you're guaranteeing your death at that point. Like, those kinds of promises almost always get broken. So just, you don't promise that. You don't promise that. Then we move on to the final climax of the book. And I'm not gonna get into too many details here because there was a lot going on and a lot of it was awesome. I loved Rowan and Aedion fighting together like brothers and like defending each other, and Lorcan, who just, like, I'm glad he came back and helped them, but he set them up in the first place, so that was kind of a dick move. And I know that giving him a fake amulet was also kind of a dick move, but he's kind of a dick. Lysandra saving all of their asses by turning into a ghost leopard and just slaughtering a path for them. Then we have the whole showdown with the king and Dorian and Chaol and Aelin, and like, I thought Chaol was dead. I really thought he was dead, but I'm really glad he's not. And then we have Dorian like saving himself by snapping off the collar, and then him and Celaena like use their magic together to take down the king. And like I already talked about earlier, I don't believe the words that came out of the king's mouth at the end there. Like, Duke Parrington he can't be the big bad. He can't be the big bad. We have the big finale with the witches as well. Kaltain got revenge for a lot of the shit she went through, and she killed the demon babies and like the witches who were being tormented, and she like took out a bunch and really set back the evil movement over there. Manon got Elide out of there and sent her off to find Aelin, so I can't wait to see how that plays out. I'm actually really excited to see the witches in the next book because magic is back now, and I think it's going to be so interesting how that affects them and like changes things for them. I loved how satisfying this book was. Like, there wasn't a cliffhanger, lots of plot lines were tied up nicely, but there's still so much to do. Like, now we have to deal with the aftermath of the king dying and Dorian taking over Adarlan and Queen Aelin heading back to Terrasen, and magic is back, and just there's so much to deal with still. I want this series to go on forever. Like, we have 2 more books, so I'm happy about that, but I could go for like another 6 or more. If Sarah, you're willing to write them, I will read them. Anyways, I think that's enough rambling for this video today, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching this probably very long video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great night, and I will have another video up soon, so I will see you then. Goodbye!